So it is a very rainy Thursday morning, and I'm on my way to handle business. But in terms of like metaphysics and spirituality, what's been on my mind was prompted by a book that I just finished reading called A Wild and Crazy God. And it was by a woman named, I want to say Barbara Eckenreich, I think her name is. But anyway, she is I want to say she's maybe a chemist, a physicist, but she's also an atheist. And in the book, she's recalling how when she was a teenager, she had really started questioning God and the universe and, kind of started to have the existential crisis that a lot of us have throughout our lives. But it was interesting because she had an experience when she was like 15 where she actually kind of saw the world kind of past the physicality of it all and actually saw that everything was kind of glowing and on fire, and it really challenged everything she thought about being an atheist. And it really got me thinking about this whole idea of atheism versus believing in God. And sometimes I wonder, and I'm not a deeply religious person. I've kind of been back and forth about this throughout my entire life. And I finally come to, I'm okay with where I'm at in terms of, my belief in a higher being. And I don't feel guilty anymore about not being religious. But in any event, I was thinking about, when people say that they are an atheist, I wonder if it really means that they don't believe in a creator. I think that a lot of atheists that I've known and being in graduate school for political science, which I did some years ago, I actually came across quite a few. There are quite a few intellectuals who consider themselves atheists. But I realized in my discussions with them, it's not that they didn't believe in a creator. What they didn't believe in was the God of the Bible, and more specifically, the Old Testament God, which, you can't really blame people. Old Testament God is kind of psychotic. You know what I'm saying? Just really seem to get off on punishing people, killing people. And my thought has always been, well, if you created me, why would you create me with all these sins and then punish me for having the same sins you could have kept me from having in the first place? And I'm thinking that it really is more about, do you believe in a creator? Because the bottom line is, we're here and we really don't know how we're here. And, you have a lot of people within the scientific community that say, well, I don't believe in God, I believe in science. Well, who created the science? You know what I'm saying? Who created the natural laws? And, you had Einstein that had his theory of relativity, and he talks about, time and space and how we basically move through time. It's us as beings that move through time. It's not time that moves. We just basically move from space to space. And you have Planck's constant, and all these other equations and stuff that, scientists rely on to explain that there's, not a God, but there has to be a creator, because who decided that, these were going to be the chemical elements, and then who decided that these chemical elements were going to come together and react in a certain way? I feel like every time we think we know, you could always go back one level further. Like, there's a magazine that I used to read a lot when I was in grad school called Skeptic Magazine. And Skeptic Magazine was completely about, believing in the power of science and not in kind of, the whole idea of, God and creating the world. And they were like, I have the ability to think. But I'm like, who came up with the concept of thinking, or what came up with the concept of thinking? Like, the fact that we can always go back farther, there's always an origin of something. I was watching something on National Geographic, and it was talking about the birth of a star. You know what I'm saying? Something is always being born. And in order for you to be born, you have to come from something. So I wonder if it's not this concept of a God that really guides the universe. It's this concept of constant creation. And obviously, I'll be fleshing, this out more in terms of, what I think about stuff. But I just really wonder, is it really about God, or are we focusing on the wrong thing? Do we really need to be focusing on creation? I don't know. Just something to think about.